Well, Pan-African Press Organization is a leading Pan-African communications consultancy and press release distribution company that empowers companies to grow their businesses on the African continent. The APO Group uses its strong relationships and knowledge of Africa to help companies grow by communicating their stories. Joining us today live from Abuja on his visit to Nigeria is Nicolas Pompigne-Mognard, the founder and chairman of the APO Group. It's great to have you on the show this evening, Nicolas.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Well, let's begin with how the APO Group has successfully highlighted positive African stories and contributed to the changing narrative about the continent. Has this been a deliberate approach on your part?
Absolutely. You know, I used to be a journalist like you. I was working for an African media, Gabon News, based in Gabon. I was a correspondent in Paris back in 2007. You know, it was that period where all the media were depicting, international media were depicting Africa as, you know, the hopeless continent, you know, the country of misery, AIDS, poverty, etc. But I knew that there were already good news about the continent. It's just that the statement, the official statement, the press releases issued by our African institutions, such as African Development Bank, Pan-African Parliament, African Union, etc., never actually reached the international media community. So that's how I created what is today the leading Pan-African communication consultancy and press release distribution service. We started by distributing press releases, starting in 2007, so it's now 16 years. Along the way, we also became a Pan-African public relation agency. And so today, we are working on a Pan-African scale, each 54 countries, providing public relation and press release distribution. And so when it comes to changing the narrative, you know, one of the things you know is that when it comes to public relation and press release distribution, that content is always positive news. We are working for, you know, multinational companies, sport federations, international institutions. When they share a press release, it's to announce the opening of a new office, to announce a new investment, to share good news. And so that makes us kind of the chief happiness officer, you know. And so we are distributing all that content for 16 years now to the African media, but also to the international media reporting on Africa. And one press release at a time, one picture at a time, one video B-roll at a time, one soundbite at a time, we are showing the world another image of the continent. And so we are changing the narrative. But we are not the only one doing that. As you know, there are a lot of organizations which are focusing on changing the narrative about Africa. It's a problem, it's an issue which need to be addressed. And so we are proud to just do our part.
Right, absolutely. And I love the term Chief Happiness Officer. Well, we also know that the company works extensively with global and Pan-African sports organizations and some associations. What would you say the importance of these collaborations are, and how does it contribute to the impact of sports on the continent?
It's true. Back in 2017, we became the official sponsor, the main official sponsor of Rugby Africa, which is the governing body of rugby in Africa. A few years down the line, in 2019, I believe, we also became the Pan-African Public Relation Agency of FIFA. So since 3-4 years now, we are managing the public relations all across the continent for FIFA, but also for the NBA, the Basketball Africa League, and we are working with Olympique de Marseille, which is a French football club. We also are the strategic partner of the ANOCA, which is the Association of National Olympic Committee of Africa, so the Olympic movement in Africa. The reason why we started discussing with those sports bodies, because, well, again, to change the image about the continent, you need to harness the power of sport. Sport is a way to show the rest of the world another image of the continent. If we talk about rugby, for instance, as you know, right now is happening in France, in Paris, the Rugby World Cup. And as you know, Africa, our continent, is the champion of the world. South Africa is the champion of the world for the third time, and they just qualified for the semi-final by showing that to the world, but by also showing that there is football, rugby, judo, volleyball, etc. across the continent. By making available all that content, we show another image of the continent. Not to mention, sport is is a big business. It's an industry which is growing very fast across the continent. There is a reason why NBA choose to open their only league outside of North America. They choose Africa. They could have chose Asia or Europe. They choose Africa, and so it's also a business for us. It's in fact a business which is growing so much that our plan is to launch very soon a subsidiary, a practice, a public relations practice dedicated to sports, dedicated to a sport federation, which we are already serving with FIFA, but also dedicated to athletes, to sport tourism. You know that there are many African countries which are bidding to host international sports events. They are betting on sport tourism. The most advanced country in that area will be Morocco and Rwanda. Just two examples. Morocco just announced within a span of 2 weeks that they were hosting the AFCON, so the Africa Cup of Nations, and they also received approval to host the FIFA World Cup. So it's huge business, obviously, for Morocco. A lot of people are going to travel to the country. A lot of infrastructure will be built. So sport is big business. Rwanda, you will be surprised, but Rwanda is going to host the World Cycling Championship. When I mention that to people, usually they are surprised, and they are all reason to be, but it's a fact. Rwanda won, and they won the bid, and they're going to host the World Cycling Championship, which means that during a couple of weeks, Rwanda will be the capital of the world of cycling, for instance.
Right, so sports is certainly big business, like you mentioned, and it's really, interesting to see you doing this collaboration. Sounds like there's so much more to look ahead for in terms of exciting initiatives you've got in the pipeline. But what new strategies and focus are you deploying for Africa's coverage at the APO Group and for Nigeria in particular?
Well, I'm here in Nigeria to have a series of meetings. I was yesterday meeting the Ministry of Sport Development. Today, I was meeting the Ministry of Information. We had very interesting discussions on the power of sport, the development of sport, sport infrastructure. You may know that I'm not only the founder and chairman of APO Group. I also have other activities. And so when it comes to sport infrastructure, when it comes to sport tourism, sport as a business, as we said, Nigeria has a huge potential. If you take the example, I also had a meeting, obviously, with the president of the Nigeria Rugby Football Federation, Dr. Ademola Adjue. And the potential, for instance, just an example of rugby in Nigeria is amazing. You have in Nigeria, you have in fact 150 Nigerian citizens which are playing rugby professionally in Europe. But given the population, the size of your population, given the morphotype you have in that country, the type of athletes you have in that country, Nigeria, which just a year and a half ago was reinstated amongst Rugby Africa and the governing body of Rugby, World Rugby, so restarted competition only 1 year and a half ago. You have huge potential. You could become, within a couple of years, you could participate to the Olympic Games, to the Rugby World Cup. So again, there is a lot of potential in sport. Sport is not only, obviously, a business, it's also development, it's also education, it's also values. So that's one of the reasons why so many organizations, so many institutions, so many development agencies, and also so many corporations are investing in sport and supporting sport. Branding is important, and branding is associating yourself to values. The values of sport are always very positive.
Absolutely, Nicolas. Lots of great potential there. But before we wrap up, let's get your opinion on this. When it comes to the media landscape in Africa, what existing challenges would you like to see get tackled generally? Very briefly.
I'm traveling across the continent. I was recently in Ghana, Morocco, Rwanda, etc. So everywhere I go, I try to meet a media owner. Private, public, I have those discussions. And I didn't start it yesterday. I started several years ago. The media landscape in Africa has the exact same challenge as the media outside of the continent. Digitalization, talent retention, those kind of challenges. But there are more pressing challenges. There are specific challenges. And one of the challenges is the fact that during the last, I would say, 5 years, I was referring to the fact that when I started, the media were depicting Africa as the hopeless continent, and no one was interested in Africa. But now, during the last 5 years, we saw so many international media investing on the continent. And so CNN, BBC, etc., but have the Turkish media, TRT, which just launched TRT Africa. Al Jazeera is big on the continent. Chinese media are big on the continent. And so the African media landscape is now facing a competition, which is not the TV next door, which is a competition which is represented by the so-called international media, which, by the way, are not international media. They are national media with international geographical coverage.
Right, absolutely. Well, I mean, we've come a long way, but there's so much more to be done. Nicolas, it was such an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today, and we hope to see you again very soon. Have a good stay in Nigeria.